ran that business for 26 years and 46 days, grew it from just the two of us and a secretary to 250 people. We sold it to Cushman & Wakefield in December of 2014 for $100 million. With respect to getting into the investment business, I think there are some similarities with regard to brokers. I would become an expert in one type of property or in one geographic location, something where you can understand the product as well, if not better than anybody, simply because you don't want to make mistakes as an investor. And the more expert you are in that one particular niche, the more successful you're likely to be.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'm super excited today. I have a very special guest. He's known to be one of the most successful investment sales broker in the commercial real estate world. I have Bob Knakal with me. So welcome, Bob. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, Graham, happy to be with you today. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. One of the questions I was going to ask you, which I'm sure you get asked all the time, but just for the people listening, give us a rundown of how you got started in real estate. Was it right out of college, or what got you into it?
Yeah, well, I actually got into the real estate business by mistake, and it was before I got out of college. Actually, it was the summer between freshman and sophomore year in college. It was 1981. I was a freshman at the Wharton School. Wanted to be the next Gordon Gekko, like every other Wharton kid, take over Wall Street, and grew up in northern New Jersey, dropped my resume off at every commercial bank and investment bank I saw during spring break, trying to get a summer job that would look good on the resume. Came out of a Payne Webber office across the hall. I saw Coldwell Banker, went in thinking it was a bank. Turned out to be a real estate company, and I didn't want to get into real estate, but they were the only ones who were hiring college kids for the summer. So I took the job, loved it, went back my next summer to run the market research group that I was participating in the first summer. And then my third summer, I got my New Jersey salesperson's license and was an assistant to an industrial broker showing industrial space to buyers and tenants, and then started with CB in Manhattan when I got out of college in 84.
That's awesome. And that's where you've been ever since, right? You've been in New York from then on?
I've been in New York, yeah, for, I was at CB for 4 years. Met my business partner, Paul Massey, there. We left in November of 1988 to start our own firm, Massey Knakal Realty Services. Ran that business for 26 years and 46 days. Grew it from just the two of us and a secretary to 250 people. We sold it to Cushman & Wakefield in December of 2014 for $100 million. And I've spent 3.5 years at Cushman, and now I've already been 5.5 years at JLL, which is hard to believe. The time just passes so quickly, but for 40 years in at this point.
That's awesome. That's huge. Yeah, I've only been in it for 5.5 years total. So 40 years that's incredible. I know we were just talking about Massimo and how you're still coached by Rod, but one of the questions I had is, walk me through a typical day. I mean, I know in commercial real estate, there's never such thing as a typical day, but what are some of the things that you're trying to make sure you're doing every day in your day-to-day business?
Yeah, well, Graham, because every day is so different, why don't I kind of lead you through a typical week and the different things that we do in a typical week. But my day always starts early. I'm an early riser. Get up, try to get to the gym right away by 5:30, 5:45, and get my workout in, and then start the day, start looking at emails, and maybe look at some social media stuff, and then get to it. And every week, the number one goal is to speak to 100 property owners every week, get around to asking them if there's anything in their portfolio they want to sell. And then it's a whole series of meeting with people, doing presentations to try to list properties, marketing the properties that we are hired to sell, making sure the team is doing what they're supposed to do. We have meetings periodically with different subsets of our capital markets platform and with individuals. And, all the typical things that brokers do, but there's no typical day, because it really depends if we have to go look at some properties prior to doing a BOV or walking in a potential buyer through a property that we're selling, number of things. But the consistent things are getting up early, getting to the gym, and making sure those prospecting calls get done every week.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of the main things they pushed a lot in Massimo, making sure you're talking to X amount of owners every week. And if you're doing that, then there's not much else you can ask for. 100 though is quite a bit. How long does that, does that generally take you the entire week? Are you time blocking at several hours at a time to just crank those out, or?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely time blocking. It used to be 50 a week until the pandemic, and then I came to realize that I could get 100 a week without interruptions or wasting time. And so it's definitely time blocking. I have a couple of days a week that are devoted just to prospecting. And time blocking is essential. You have to do that 2 or 3 weeks in advance, or you'll never find the time to block out those chunks of time. And it's really hard to make prospecting calls a half hour here and an hour there. I think at least 2 or 3 hour blocks of time are needed so you can really focus. And now I've gotten to the point where I block out a whole day or two a week just for prospecting calls, in addition to the other time blocks that are done.
Yeah, I can imagine, because, typically when I'm cold calling, I might get somebody on the phone, and if it's a new prospect or, a property I'm interested in, it could take 30, 45-minute conversation with one person. So if you're actually talking to 100 people, I can imagine that would take an entire day or two. The next question I had, which I don't think I've heard anybody ask you this yet, but I'm curious. Do you invest in commercial real estate?
I don't. I don't. And I do it intentionally for a couple of reasons. One, when we were running Massey Knakal, which was a 26-year run, all that we were really focused on was trying to make that company as valuable as possible. I think investing in property is a full-time job. And I know some brokers do it very effectively. They broker and they buy stuff. And, I think that's great that they're able to do that. During the MK years, I just wanted to focus on making the company valuable. Post MK, I realized I don't really know much about investing, which sounds kind of weird given that I deal with investors all day long, but I think it's a different skill set, and also don't want to compete with my clients. I never wanted to have to answer the question, well, Bob, if you're offering me this deal, if it's such a great deal, why didn't you buy it? And so I think that's a question that folks who are known to be brokers and buyers get asked a lot. I just think it's a conflict of interest, and so have stayed away from it. And also, if you think about diversification theory as an investment strategy, if I'm a broker and the brokerage business and brokerage income is dependent upon the health of the real estate market, and the market is down, so my income is down, and I need to rely on my investments. If my brokerage income is down, the value of my buildings that I own, if I own buildings, probably would be down too. So you have all your eggs in one basket, which not necessarily the best investment strategy.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I assume then you're probably investing in the stock market or something else aside from real estate.
No, I'm a very boring investor, a lot of tax-free bonds and stuff like that. But I feel like I gamble every day when I go to work. And so with my investments, I like to not gamble at all.
I respect that, and that makes sense. So cool. One question I had is, what is, obviously you're known to be one of the most successful brokers ever. So I imagine you could retire at this point. What's keeping you going? Why haven't you
The
thrown in the
love
towel?
of the game. Yeah. Well, love of the game, I would say. Selling buildings for me is a career and it's a hobby. So if I had any free time, I'd want to be doing this. But I really do enjoy it. And, there's a lot of satisfaction that you get from the variety of wins that you are able to achieve as a broker. You feel the sense of winning when a client calls and says, hey, I'm thinking about selling. You get that same feeling when you get awarded the listing and they sign the agreement. You get that same feeling when the contract of sale is signed. You get that same feeling when the deal closes. So lots of winning, and it's a great feeling. And, I just really, really, truly passionate and love the business.
That's awesome. That's really cool. What's kind of your tech stack? Like, what are you using to run your business? Like, for instance, what CRM? What else are you leveraging right now?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that my tech stack I'll give you an example of it. This is my tech stack right there.
Okay.
I'm very old school, very analog, write things down, lots of paper. But for the CRM, I use RealNex. RealNex is a great system. We also have a proprietary system within JLL that is used, and trying to adapt and adopt a lot of AI. I've really been looking at a lot of different AI products, trying to figure out what works best, and that's really interesting because that whole world is evolving so rapidly. It's practically changing week to week. I looked at one new application, and Rod told me, you know what? Don't even get too much in the weeds on that. And within 2 weeks, they're coming out with the next version of it. So it was like it's really changing very, very quickly.
Yeah, that was actually my next question, because I know that Rod has mentioned that a lot. How are you using AI? But I guess what are some examples that you've tried to experiment with using AI?
Well, different products to analyze data. In fact, I'm
Hmm.
doing some proprietary AI stuff now with a land value index that I'm working on, where I've hired a couple of data scientists to come up with our own algorithms to determine what macroeconomic factors are most highly correlated to fluctuations in land value. Also, looking at a variety of things that are used that can help in prospecting, market presence, outreach, things like that. So, still going through the process of trying to determine which ones are the best and which ones work most effectively. But we're moving forward with that stuff.
Okay, cool. If there was one that you could throw out there right now that somebody could go use, what would it be? If you got one off
I
the top
don't
of your
know the
head.
names of these things,
Okay.
but working with the folks that have developed them, and once I get in a groove with something, I'm happy to share that with everybody. But a lot of trial and error, or just trial, I guess, at this point to figure out what works best.
I saw that obviously you're starting to build your social media presence, and you've been successful at it. I saw one of the most recent videos you did was your suit video. That was funny. So one of my questions is, why did you start, getting into that game, the social media world, and start using it for your business? And then also, have you seen it? Have you seen, it impacting your business in a positive way? I assume yes, but just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I joke around and say peer pressure was the reason that I got involved with it. I had for a long time, I had a lot of folks telling me, "Hey, Bob, you've been around for a while. You have a lot of great stories to share. You should be on social media, and it's great networking." Everybody knows I really enjoy networking, so they're like, social media is like networking on steroids. Should give it a try. Finally, I caved in December of 2022. I said, well, you know what? In January, I'll give it a try. I'll try it for 3 months, see how it goes. Figured out what my cadence was going to be. Hired a social media manager to help me with posting and everything, so I didn't have to learn how to edit video or post things online. And so Mo Regalato has been my social media manager, and I always write all my own content. I've always written articles and a lot of messages to my clients and things like that. So do my content creation on the weekends typically, send it all to Mo, and then she takes care of all the posting and things like that. But it's been great. I've been exposed to opportunities that I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. Made some great relationships with people that I would never have met but for social media. So far it's been great. I think we're working on a couple of deals now that were precipitated by social media. So we'll see if we can turn those opportunities into some money. And but so far it's been a real pleasure, and I've met some really great people.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, and that's how I reach out to you through Instagram. So it's definitely a powerful tool. One of the next questions I have is, who's somebody that you look up to in the industry and kind of are following closely in the commercial real estate world?
Yeah, well, a good friend and a mentor of mine has always been Steve Siegel, who's the chairman of global brokerage at CBRE.
Hmm.
Steve is an absolute titan legend in the business, and he not only is one of the top brokers in the world, but is also an investor and a client. And I always get pearls of wisdom every time I speak to him, and feel fortunate to count him as a friend in the business.
That's really cool. I've seen his name, but haven't really followed him closely. So I'll have to go give him a follow and read up on him. The last question, this is the
Yeah.
last one I had for you. What would you say to somebody new, who's a brand new investor? They want to get their first deal in commercial real estate. How would you advise them if they approached you kind of with that question?
Well, from an investment point of view, it's funny. I'm usually asked that question. What would you say to someone new who wants to get into the brokerage business? With respect to getting into the investment business, I think there are some similarities with regard to brokers. I would become an expert in one type of property or in one geographic location, something where you can understand the product as well, if not better than anybody, simply because you don't want to make mistakes as an investor. And the more expert you are in that one particular niche, the more successful you're likely to be. So I would say, narrow in on one type of deal. Just don't say, hey, I buy real estate. Buy one type of real estate. Like, for instance, one of the folks I met on social media is Don Tepman, who is the strip mall guy.
Hmm.
And Don just buys strip malls, knows everything about them, knows, you give him 100 tenants, he could rank them from 1 to 100 in terms of, how they enhance a strip mall. And having that kind of knowledge is something that, will increase the probability very greatly that an investor will be successful. So I think being an expert at something, knowing it really, really well, treating brokers well is important, because you want to be one of those first couple of calls when a broker gets a new listing. Also, I work with the smaller brokerage companies. I don't know how it works across the whole country, but I know in New York, the top 30 brokerage companies only handle about half of the transactions every year. So a
Hmm.
lot of the transactions are done by mom and pop brokers and principal to principal. So I suggest to investors, if you come to me, if I offer you a property, you're going to have to pay more than 10,000 other people that I've offered it to. But if you go to a small mom and pop broker or a resi-mercial broker, maybe they're only offering it to a handful of people. You have a better opportunity to buy something at a more attractive price. So I think understand your market, know your property type really well, and develop relationships with the folks that can bring you the best deals.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, relationships are key. It's one of the biggest things in the business. But resi-mercial, I've never heard that term. That's funny. I'm gonna have to start using that.
Yeah, well, a lot of residential brokers primarily doing residential stuff, and every once in a while they'll come across a commercial deal and try to market that. As an investor, you want to be in the way of that transaction, because that broker probably doesn't have a list of 10,000 people they're sending their commercial deals out to. So maybe you can buy something a little under market if you're working with a broker like that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, I think you gave a lot of valuable information. And once again, I appreciate you coming on here and doing this podcast. So thank you again, Bob. It was a pleasure.
Graham, my pleasure to be with you. Hope folks listening in got something out of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, take care.